Today we're going to be covering our topic on AI and acquisition diligence. On the call, we have our great partners from Quantum Rise. They have been evolving quite fast in the AI space. And like we do here at Consero, we have approached everything from an agentic way. We've found our partners in the AI and diligence space to take that approach as well. So that being said, look, quick updates on our relationship with Quantum Rise. We were part of this effort to collaborate with them on the Samba acquisition, the first consolidated financial statement completed for QR. And then we also were using a combined exclusive master report for billing every month. And then simultaneously, as they were doing the acquisition, we also did put in a ramping integration with their group. And in this journey at Consero, what we see from a private equity and acquisition standpoint is there's always a matchmaking process. And at Consero, we have about 300 clients. And within our client framework, there's always a matchmaking process going on. There's acquisitions, strategic buyouts, and exits in the process. In Q1 itself, we've done 17 acquisitions, and we're excited to keep going along this journey with Quantum Rise. I'll hand it over to Nick and Josh to introduce themselves from Quantum Rise.
Thanks, Mitt. I'm Nick Foster here, VP of Finance at Quantum Rise, going to sit at the intersection of finance and operations. And then for any private equity folks out there, before my time here, I was on the value creation team at Erie Street, focused on kind of financial transformation at the portfolio companies.
Yeah, I'm Josh Kohn. I'm Executive Vice President of Strategy here, lead obviously some of our strategy, our service and offering design, work with our professional services teams and our managing directors on our go-to-market, and really engage with our clients on how best to integrate AI into their companies, whether that be at a firm or portfolio company as part of a diligence process. Try to be hand in hand with our clients and all of that.
Great. So a couple of questions. I probably just begin with Nick. This we'll keep it casual and let's have a good discussion around this. And since AI is kind of the big focus in every segment of the business, so when we talk about AI in M&A, what does that look like today versus 2 years ago? Like, where are you seeing the biggest shifts? How deals are getting done? And then typically in which phase of the deal cycle are you seeing the biggest impact, right? So
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, AI going through an M&A process was more of a checklist item during diligence. You think, do they have AI? Do they have a data strategy? It was basically just like a part of evaluating the tech stack almost. Not a whole lot of real weighting going on, and there's, the theses behind investments didn't really depend on it. Where now I think firms are really buying the future state of the business and not just the current state. And so, the thesis are increasingly assuming that, you want to buy something where you can have AI-enabled scale. How can you get faster ops, leaner headcount, new revenue channels? I mean, thinking through all the different ways AI can be applied to the business. And so now it's not a do they have AI question, but how quickly can we get there and what's standing in the way, and really allowing that to drive kind of the value creation roadmap. And then for your question on which phase of the deal cycle, I think kind of post LOI and pre-close, when the value creation roadmap is really value creation and integration roadmap are really being created and solidified with both management teams. It's making sure that what used to just be a financial hygiene exercise, and now it's not just validating the numbers and stress testing the transformation plan, and both how AI can assist in the integration and in the value creation, but also ways that it can be utilized to create more enterprise value post acquisition and the different commercial opportunities with it as well.
are these like agents you guys have created to handle that process, or?
Yeah, I mean, internally, it's the I'll speak on the kind of pre-close side and then let Josh talk about some
Yeah.
of the agents, but it's thinking through, someone in my seat as on more like the finance and operations side, thinking through, okay, we have all these great ideas of how we can put AI into this roadmap. And then, I mean, it's great having people in-house that do this for other clients that are able to assist me in doing this, and then brainstorming with them, how could we throw agents at this and deploy this to make the integration smoother and create unlock some more value. And I'll defer to Josh to talk about some of the
Yeah.
ways we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go back to something I think you said at the beginning, Nick, was the difference in how AI is viewed as a component of the portfolio company just over the last couple of years. Quantum Rise was founded in 2024, and we've been working in diligence with different equity partners over that time. And I think one of the big changes is, a kind of joke in this industry is I've been in AI since we called it machine learning.
Yeah.
And the change in what's available and branded on the market as AI has been really meaningful, obviously, over the last 2 years. I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know, but it's gone from a review of does this company have a machine learning stack, ML ops, to what are the market implications of these other tools coming on the market? Is that, if that's agentic shopping or some of the generative technology we've seen, especially in representation of like human speech or images or something like that. I think it's become a lot more front and center in the tailwinds, headwinds evaluation of companies, as opposed to only being looked at as, is this an AI company or not an AI company?
So then, is it fair to say that if firms do not use AI in the diligence process, are they starting to leave money on the table?
Yeah, I think so. Like certainly the proverbial money on the table. I think
Okay.
the more important, and I'm sure anyone who's worked in this process can back this up, is they're leaving time on the table, right? I was talking to someone yesterday about the volume of things you end up with in their virtual deal room, or that be multiple years of financial statements, documentation on their tech stack, uh, team structure, all of those sorts of things. And one of the painstaking bits of working through that is you generally need to cross-reference all of those at the same time, right? If you're working on a segment of your diligence, it's very rarely like I have one file open and it's a linear process as I go through my checklist, right? I need to be able to tie the 2025 Q2 performance to what their product roadmap was, what their kind of in-house talent looked like at the time, and being able to use a system. This is not a sales pitch for a quantum system. There's a lot out there that can do this, but we can certainly help with agents and things. Is how do I tie those together? How have I, tag some of that data in the deal room or in a pipeline-based system where you're pulling that into a central repository. So I'm pulling up the relevant facts as I work through, and you have that, you know, people talk about AI as kind of like an intern. If you can think of that as I work through the diligence process, I have someone flagging all the relevant details for me and helping aggregate those in a way that facilitates the speed.
That makes sense. So you just want to double click on one area of focus is the intelligence side. I keep talking about that to
Sure.
a lot of folks in my communities and at Consero as well. Is what are the most important signals AI can help uncover that you would ideally not get in a traditional process in your spectrum? Like, what do you think that you're able to uncover in that space?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think it obviously depends what documents you have access to, which is
Mm.
the annoying kind of consultant caveat at the beginning. But the ability to pull out trends across document types is really interesting. I talked to someone who was looking at, I want to pull out give me the way they reported progress on this milestone over the last like 8 board minutes kind of thing. Like let's pull out text information that I can layer in kind of like a trending format and look at that relevant to what was actually happening. I think you can start to compare to what you would expect market trends to be a lot more easily if you're looking at things like churn, right? Like what is their net retained revenue?
Yeah.
And let's plot that easily against what we expect it to be. I think it's really useful when you're talking about let's embed some intelligence in the process to have, and I've talked to kind of our PE partners about this and banking partners, is how do we format what your thesis is for this company in a way that is reviewable as context alongside the rest of these documents or sheets or what have you.
Okay, interesting. Now, diving on to another subject here in that space is I would focus on technology and data infrastructure. The trends we're seeing at Consero is like now you can connect API connections and all that really fast. And AI-driven integrations
Yeah.
like pretty much accelerating everything for us. So on your end, how are you seeing that evolve in the private equity and the acquisition space? Like being able to now do AI-driven integrations now that that's on the table.
Yeah, I think that's great. But then there's uh kind of some of the more, I guess, straightforward use cases I was talking about. Like, let's get through some of these processes earlier. I've talked to people about how do we get kind of projected performance post acquisition. Let's play some of this out. Let's start putting it into what your actual KPIs are for that, whether it's 100 days, 3 years, whatever the roadmap looks like. I think is a really interesting part to start kind of like pre-reporting on things. So you're almost creating your baseline in your actual system kind of as you go. I think there are other use cases if we're willing to these are certainly all human in the loop processes, right? We're not saying any of these should be AI and done and just you ship that. But I was talking to someone who was working through a merger the other day, and they were talking about the issues they were having with fairly large companies that use different titling structures and levels. And I think there's really interesting kind of just basically job title mapping that you can do leveraging LLMs, right? If you want to give it some base truth to work from, but just how mathematically similar is this cluster of words to this cluster of words is principally what these tools do. So we can start creating some of this mapping and get ahead of those pain points that I'm sure we've all experienced working through either post-merger integrations or being part of them ourselves, where you have someone's called a senior manager over here and it's a manager over here, or it's called reliability engineers versus infrastructure engineers or kind of what have you. And these kind of lived pain points become a lot more easily addressed ahead of time if you can tell people like, hey, this is probably what the future state titling is going to look like, and let's all start moving towards that. You set, objectives and things. You're not going to go all one day change, but there's these kind of peoples and processes changes that we can start to move forward towards a lot faster, I think, with leveraging some tooling.
Mhm.
Interesting, interesting.
And it
And what
used,
about,
if
go
I
ahead.
could just say something too quickly, like it used to be, especially in mid-market acquisitions and integrations as well, where those first 12 to 18 months of a roadmap were, whether it was a platform or an add-on, was either, turning fragmented ERPs into something combined, or for like a platform, spending 12 to 18 months of data modernization and turning it into something
Yeah.
usable where you could do anything. Where now we're in a world where, not to get crazy here, but that can be as short as 6 months now. And then especially when you partner with someone like Consero to
Yeah.
help with the ERP side of it and the finance as a service. But you don't have to just focus on that for 12 to 18 months, and you can have AI assist you and keep getting started on kind of the more value creating parts of the roadmap much earlier now, which is incredibly exciting for us.
So you see, you just touched on data monetization, which I was going to ask you something follow up to that is, can that be like a potential commercial product as a differentiator, like a revaluation like of older mid-market or, for years of historical? Because now with AI, you're able to tap into data
Yeah.
in a more efficient way. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'd love to jump in on that. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really interesting one because you have these companies, and I think the word legacy, used
Yeah.
is used a lot, or just companies that have been around for a lot and maybe exist primarily in the services space. But as part of their business, they've been collecting a lot of really relevant customer data over those years without necessarily something to do with it other than surface their clients better, which is obviously a very valuable thing to do. But it's a I think that's where a lot of the diligence has moved, to Nick's point earlier, where it's not, is this company AI or not? It's what could AI do for this company, and kind of valuing their data. How do we both look at like what is the value of the data we need to run this business, and what is the value of the data we produce as a byproduct of this business, and can actually look to create a new revenue stream, is becoming a big topic. Uh,
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people out there who are really kind of hungry for data, customer data across different market slices and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is good information. And then now diving into something more sensitive, I like to probe a lot of inquisitive questions, so I'll go a little bit deeper, but without getting into anything confidential. What did Quantum Rise's recent acquisition, D-House, that you just did, reinforce you about AI and automation? Because that was more recent. You had the AI capabilities and everything with you. So could you share a little bit about that? I know you can't go into the confidential stuff, but if you can share some thoughts there, that would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, the AI side of it, and I'll also speak to how some of the items that you had mentioned early on, Mitt, with Consero's support as well, and unlocking from my side on the operational of, with I started working with my team there for probably when LOI happened to close of letting them know what was going on. It was as simple as for me giving the green light of let's get this integrated and going. Um, Within a month, we had combined financials. I, at the same time, was able to get both companies on a ramp and has made my life incredibly easier. Which then, at the same time, we had product and delivery going on the flip side, where would have had to bring someone in like Quantum Rise to kind of run that integration, having that in-house, being able to get combined, agentic workflows, which I'll let Josh touch on a bit more of the product and delivery side of the integration. But Consero, from my end, I just wanted to say was incredibly helpful being able to stand up in the ways that they are able to start leveraging AI as well to get combined financial reporting and operations within a month was incredible.
I think the combined financials part, like not to breeze over that as part of the
Yeah.
actual delivery work because it's sort of the table stakes we need to iron out to be able to smoothly
Mhm.
do cross-border delivery. Right? This is an external or priorly previously was an external company, and now we're operating as one much
Yeah.
faster than I've ever experienced in my past. And
Hmm.
admit, I guess I want to ask you because there's this, you can do a lot with the tools, uh, like data cleansing and mapping, right? So we're getting like financial reports from
Yeah.
different systems, we're getting the ERP data from different systems, and being able to like use those to match up data to do that kind of reconciliation so you can get into a single point is uh I don't know, meaningful. Like it felt very light and fast from my perspective. So would love to kind of like hear how you guys thought about that too.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. On the Consero side, right, I actually came from an acquisitive background. I was in private equity. We were doing healthcare acquisitions and all that. So yeah, I kind of went through the pain points of acquisitions. And to your point, what you said there, Josh, like we started in the machine learning rules-based engines
Yeah.
creation.
Hmm.
So it feels like AI, but it's not AI, but it's more rules-based.
Yeah.
And then we pivoted to AI. But I think having integrate ERPs seamlessly, being able to build up a chart of account mapping, being able to go ahead and create your OBS entries and all that from an accounting perspective and all that, that goes a long ways if you can do it in minutes and not months and weeks and months. So I think obviously there's a data cleansing aspect to it. There are a couple of tools and technologies we use like Doyen and all these other tools to help cleanse it faster from a capabilities perspective. So this is good. So at least in our verticals we're trying to leverage AI as much as
Right.
we can from that perspective. So no, this is really good. And then the other question I had to ask is like is there's like when we're thinking about building AI capabilities, right? Because we face this at Consero, right? There are often big gaps between what it takes to stand something up versus taking it to maintain it over time, right? So
Right.
can you talk about that difference and where you see firms most often underestimate the maintenance side, and how do you approach that on your side?
Yeah, I think this is something we talk to a lot of clients
Mm.
about it that, whether it be a portco or someone who's not associated with private equity, there's this pull, especially when you're looking at data valuation, right? Like that can sometimes be an entry point to like, okay, well, we should have X internal capabilities, which is great. You should have those capabilities. But I think it's important to consider whether or not you want to become a software company,
Okay.
because that's a very different model. We work with a number of different business services, professional services company, where the question is more like, how do I deliver my human-led services better? Right. And that's a very different question than how do I create an AI consultant as a for
Yeah.
instance. Right. And Quantumrise is our approach thesis is to allow me as a senior consultant essentially to deliver more value to my clients without having the full team behind me, which allows us to be, more flexible in terms of compared to, more the legacy consultants that have like massive benches that they have to maintain. And we work with, other firms in the same space. And like they want to maintain that human relationship, right? That is at the core of what their business is. And that then takes an approach of like, what can we stand up that accelerates this in the background, allows you to expose the important parts to your clients. And yeah, you probably need to hire some people who can maintain machine learning platforms, right? Whether there be machine learning engineers, infrastructure engineers, what have you, but you don't need the same amount that it would require to build something. Right. And that's
Yeah.
where it's been really great for us as the kind of we can help build the thing partner to come in with a bigger team, work hand in hand with the client's team so that they're fully aware of what the code is, what our assumptions are about hosting and infrastructure and what have you, what APIs are being involved, what languages we're using in coding, make sure it matches the kind of like design and development standards for their company. If they're not, familiar with using some of the newer coding assist tools, make sure everybody's kind of on board with similar use of that, what good standards for that are. And then we, have a pilot handoff period we hope to continue working with the clients so that we're available to help, but really want to set them up in a position where we don't have to afterwards.
Nice, nice. Interesting there. So I'm maybe probing too many questions because I'm just trying to get the audience
No,
to get a wealth of knowledge out of both of you here. So the other thing, and this is just kind of relating back to my PE days as well, right? Especially the PE firms like I've operated under, which is which has a multiple portfolio companies under it. So then how do you guys prioritize AI which can have the fastest impact post acquisition, right? Because like AI is everywhere. There's so many use cases now. Like, how do you prioritize how to have the fastest impact post acquisition?
Yeah, I can start with this
Yeah.
one, Josh. I think it's there's only so much human capital that you have to deploy within within a private equity firm. I mean, value creation teams are usually pretty lean, and I mean it's a new world of solving the same thing of where is the data the cleanest and where can we get the quickest kind of solutions and take the fastest ones that you can early. I mean, finance, not to talk about my world more, but it's usually the easiest quick example where it's pretty easy to go in and get AP automation now and reporting and consolidation. Like that's a 2 to 3 month ROI that you can see right off the bat is a quick and easy win. And then I think the two of you were discussing earlier then where you can really commercialize some of the data and in the ways that AI can unlock revenue is where I think then is great to kind of look at for long term and think through that, we got some of the efficiencies, got the quick wins, and then pivot to the longer bets where, you can use some of that historical data, turn it into new revenue or different ways to unlock value using AI. And that all really should be coming from the diligence process and kind of have that roadmap laid out of not just like the AI readiness, but the kind of prioritized roadmap of what to do and why and when.
It feels more like a Lego piece building process kind of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Got to take the quick wins when you can at
Yeah.
first and start off on a high note.
yeah, I think that's an important piece. I had this conversation a couple times, but was just speaking to someone about it yesterday. There's this look of like, what is their data quality, right? And
Mhm.
people look at data quality, I think, too often as a binary answer, like the data is good or bad, but that's very rarely like a universal, right? Maybe in total, the data is not of great quality, but there is probably some data that is useful. And part of the roadmap process is like, let's plan out what we can do with what your internal systems support now, And
Yeah.
then build a roadmap to the rest of it to make sure there's value along the way. But there are these things that are, I think specifically when working with people who own multiple companies, or when we're working across portfolio, there are these kind of shared use cases, right? Everybody gets vendor invoices. So when you're working with a portfolio company, to the extent you can set up something that, or with a portfolio company, to the extent you can set it up so that their PE partner can then share
Yeah.
it across their portfolio,
Mhm.
and you can kind of, there's some economies of scale there you can leverage. I think it's especially valuable when you have similar stacks across the portfolio. And I think generally people hear that and they're like, well, that's kind of that's a bit of a wish list, is I want everybody on the same platforms. But I think it might be in some areas slightly more common than we give it credit for. Like most people are on Microsoft. Right?
Yeah.
So if we just isolate it to Microsoft and Salesforce are the two we want common, that's a fairly common pairing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of your business data and the metrics you care about live somewhere between your email, your SharePoint, and your CRM. And if we can triangulate those, there's a lot of things you can do, and we have done, and there are some repeatable solutions in there that I think are really valuable.
Yeah. It's probably fair to say with the newer LLM models that are out there, you can even have data cleansing effort done by
Yeah,
AI as
yeah,
well to a certain
absolutely.
degree, right? It's like, oh, okay, data doesn't make sense. Okay, let AI figure that out, for us from that perspective and give us recommendations there. Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I think especially if you there's a lot of different cases for this, but if you work in any situation where you get what you would call the same report for five, six parties, but none of them use the same format, that used to be a very manual process. If I have to create data mapping for every new vendor or partner I onboard, I have to be able to put that all in a system. That's kind of much simpler now, because you can use the kind of like the semantic models, the LMs to match up columns and rows and all that.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah. And then so like pretty much execution is where value is won or lost, right? So what are the operating model, talent, or process changes required to turn the AI-driven findings
Yeah,
into like measurable results? Because like in my space, it was all about measurable results right after the deal. And coming from a PE shop and being an operator, it's like those savings need to be realized. Everything that was underwritten in the deal needs to be realized, pretty much, right? So, how do you see that playing with the AI journey?
yeah, I think that's great. It's important to hit the ground running. One, to realize the value of like that
Yeah,
you're talking that you underwrote. I also remember being at PEI last fall and hearing someone talk about the value of momentum in the first 100 days. Right? If you come out of the gate storming, everybody in the portfolio company feels great. It carries over a lot longer than those 100 days. Whereas if
yeah,
you have fits and starts, or you're just launching things at the end of 3 months, you lose some of that momentum. Um, so I think some of the key execution pieces, and a lot of this is not, we're certainly not reinventing the wheel with this, is do you have assigned leaders for these things? And I think it's important that the assigned leaders capacity matches up a bit. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a machine learning expert. You don't have to go out and hire a chief AI officer immediately to run in any AI project, but maybe there's a centralized kind of like AI review process. Right? We've worked with clients on standing up like transformation offices, what AI governance looks like, and these are not meant to be process for the sake of process. Right? This is about creating a way in which you can repeatably iter ideate on, refine, and then deliver AI and AI pilots. And it's a really great starting point for that, because in the first 100 days coming out of the acquisition process, you probably have a list of three or four things that immediately go into that queue, right? And you can refine your processes as you're building through things are already good ideas and approved.
nice, nice. And then interesting. So, you know, the other probably two questions I want to just cover is one is when PE firms close an acquisition and need to integrate that company, right, into scalable finance functions quickly. What makes that go well versus poorly, right? Because that is probably the most pivotal portion of the journey, ideally, right?
Yeah, I know we're at time, so I can
Yeah,
be
yeah,
quick on this here and just speak from my experience both at Quantum Rise and at Erie Street before. I mean, in my head, the most important part is having that integration plan laid out before day one and kind of breaking it into, like we call it phase zero, phase one, and phase two. And phase zero is everything that needs to be done before day one can start. And you can unlock the phase one work of actually getting the businesses operationally integrated and able to work together, which then is, getting the finance combined, all the operational work streams together. And then phase two is where we really kind of pivot to more of like the strategy integration items, which I had mentioned a bit before, which that's then really unlocking like the synergies that exist both on the cost and revenue side and ways that you can kind of unlock both businesses together. And within that phase one is kind of where the finance function in specific lands and making sure you have the right team to put things into motion, get them integrated operationally. And like for us, it makes the most sense to go with like the outsourced finance as a
Yeah.
service model where, this isn't necessarily an acquisition integration, but when we stood up Quantum Rise a couple of years ago, we met with Consero, had a conversation, and it decided it was the right move. We were on Sage Intacct and had a full finance function built within, I think, 2 months max.
Yeah.
And it's, I think a lot of people like to just throw a lot of bodies at problems sometimes without thinking through the ways that you can leverage third parties and I have a complete finance function at scale now that I would not be able to have with trying to hire internally.
If I can add just on
Appreciate, yeah,
this,
go
the
ahead.
strategic side of that, I think, part of the reason to go with the flexible finance department was also exactly for what we just did, right? It was so that in the future, if I want to bring in a group of 50 or 60 people, regardless of geography, we can scale then. We don't have to then also stand up an additional department. We're not adding all these like hiring requirements and training and new systems and all that on top of the process of an integration, which I think
Mhm.
goes back to kind of my earlier point of it as seamless as I've experienced.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. So that's pretty good. No, it was pleasure having you both. I know we're
Yeah.
up at the time, having you both. One last message for everyone. AI cannot golf.
We're working on it though.
We're working on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Neither can I, so that's fine.
So,
Well,
have
it was
fun
a pleasure.
and
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mitt.
likewise.
Thank you, Mitt, and thanks, Nick and Josh, for joining us today. As a reminder, we will be sharing this recording within the next few business days, so be on the lookout for an email from Consero. And thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Good one.